Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're creating leafy branches that anyone can draw in Procreate. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're creating together. Not only are we going to create these branches, we're also going to add in some extra depth effects with some shadows and highlights. As always, the color palette is entirely free. Just tap on the link in the video description and you can download and install it. We're only using one brush for all of this, and it's my free mono weight brush. You can pick it up when you become a free Every Tuesday email subscriber. So I'm going to create a brand new document that is screen size, and then we'll get started. Okay, I've got my screen size document. I'm going to leave the background white just to make it a little bit easier to see everything as it's happening, and then we'll finish everything off with that dark background and make everything kind of pop and move forward. So for our very first one, we're going to create something that looks a little bit similar to a fern. So I'm going to start off with my medium blue color right here. So it's the second one on the bottom. I've got my mono weight brush selected and I'm at 5%. So mono weight brush, 5%, and we're just going to draw a simple curve, and then we're going to draw that pointy leaf. It's going to be long and skinny, and we're going to make this symmetrical. So as our leaves are going down, they're also going to get larger. And now I'm going to fill all of these in, so you can just drag your color in. If your color doesn't drag all the way in, just keep your stylus on screen and increase the threshold. You can see the color drop threshold up here. If you increase it, you can fill in, like if you look right here as I'm increasing it, it'll fill in those little gaps. Sometimes you'll still have gaps no matter what, but then you can just paint those in really easily. So that is our first leafy branch, and we're going to add a little bit of complexity to it by adding some shadow right down the center. So in order to do that, you're going to come to your layers, you're going to create a brand new layer. You're going to grab the fourth color up at the top, and we're just going to draw a shape all the way in the middle that comes down. We're going to fill that with color, and then we're going to apply a Gaussian blur to it. So come up here, tap on your magic wand, select Gaussian blur, drag, and I'm going to drag it to like 10%, and then come to your layers, tap on your layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask, and that will mask it right into the shape. And you can see we've got this nice subtle gradient right in the center. If you'd like it to appear a little bit darker, just change the blend mode to multiply. So tap on the N, drag this up to multiply, and that will just make it a little bit darker. And that's all there is to it. So now we're going to take this a step even further, and we're going to apply a shadow to this. So I'm going to grab my leaf shape. So let me label this Leafy Branch 1. So we're going to duplicate this. So drag it over to the left, choose duplicate. And now on this bottommost one, we need to change the color of it, because right now if I turn off this layer, you can see it's still this medium blue color. So I need to change the color to black. So tap on your magic wand again, choose recolor, grab these crosshairs and move them right to the shape. And then on your color wheel, just double tap where black is, and that will select true black. And now this is black. Now I can use this as a shadow. I can deselect, come back to my layers. I'm going to turn on my leafy branch right above my shadow now. Let's label this one shadow. And you can't see it right now because it's behind this top one, and because it's the same exact shape, that's why you can't see it right now. But now we're going to do things so it will appear as a shadow. So what I'm going to do is select it. So hit your cursor up here, and instead of just tapping it or nudging it down, which you see most people do, we're going to apply a distortion to it. And this will seem more realistic the way the sun is hitting it. So if you hit distort right here and I grab a node, I'm going to turn off magnetics too. So just make sure distort is selected, and I can just grab a top node and drag it just a little bit. So this will make the distortion. You can see how we've got a lot of gappage right here between the shadow and the leaf. And then down here, it's very subtle. So that's kind of similar to once you have a light source and it's hitting it. So I'm going to also move this one up just a little bit, so I've got some shadow happening on this side as well, and I really like the way that looks. Now we need to apply a blur to it so our shadow isn't so crisp that it's competing with our leaves. So if I come back to my magic wand and choose motion blur, I'm just going to apply a very subtle motion blur in the direction that I want the shadow to go. So my direction is this way, so I'm just going to tap on my screen and drag down, and I'm keeping it not crazy. I'm going to go to like 10% right here. So now I'm going to reduce the opacity of it just so it's not competing. So I'm going to come down. Let's see. That looks pretty good. Let's go 50%. And now to make everything come forward, we're going to apply a shape behind it. So let me zoom out a little bit, create a brand new layer, drag this one underneath your shadow layer, and I'm just going to label this one color. And the color of this one is going to be this super light teal color right here. So it's the third one. And I'm just going to draw kind of an oval, but I'm going to make it look a little more organic. So it's a little wavier. And then just fill it with color. And that's it. And you can see that shadow looking really nice. And if you want the shadow to pop even more, all you have to do is apply multiply blend mode to it. So just drag this up and that will apply a little bit of extra contrast between it and the background color. Let me make my color a little more centered behind. So we've got everything completed for leaf number 1. We want to group all of our layers together. That way, when we have all 4 of our leaves together, it'll be really easy to move and manipulate them. So just tap on your top layer and drag the other ones to the right and then choose group. And I'm just going to label this one number 1. Moving on to leaf number 2. The rest of these are going to go much quicker now that we have the foundation. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to come back to my middle blue color right here. I'm just going to draw one branch and then I'm going to give myself stems all the way down, and it's going to be symmetrical again. And now I'm going to create a brand new layer. Let me label this one branch. This one's going to be labeled leaves. Drag your leaves underneath your branch layer. And for your leaves, these ones are going to be light colored. So I'm going to grab my lightest blue color right here. And these ones are going to be circular. So I'm just going to draw circles. All right, fill these with color. These details are going to be highlights instead of shadows. Like we have the shadow down the center here. Now we're going to apply highlights to each one of these leaves. So I'm going to create a brand new layer above my branch layer, label this one highlights. And we're going to grab our lightest color, so it's the middle one right here. And I'm just going to put a shape that's kind of colored in right here. And then this one is going to be on the right side, and these ones are also going to be on the right side. So my light source is hitting right here. So I'm giving myself little highlight shapes. And we're going to apply a blur to this. So tap on your magic wand, choose Gaussian blur, drag this up to, let's see, I'm gonna keep mine at 4%. So for this one, we kept our leaves and our branch on separate layers so we could have the branch poking through or showing up on top of the leaves. So if we want to apply a shadow to everything, we need to combine these. So what I'm going to do is first group all of these together, and we'll label this one 2. And then I'm going to duplicate this. So drag the entire group to the left, choose duplicate. Grab your bottommost one, and we're just going to flatten this one. So tap in the layer thumbnail and choose flatten. And now this merged all of those layers together. So if I turn off this top one, you can see it's the exact same thing, only all the layers are compressed now. They're not as editable as they were before because we're just going to use this one as our shadow. And that's why we needed to combine everything. But if we just recolor it right now, we're going to get different shades of black in here, and we don't want that. We want this entire thing to be black. So a really easy way to do that is just tap on your layer thumbnail, choose select, and this will just select this shape. Now I'm going to grab black, so double tap, and you'll get true black right here. And now I'm going to come back to my mono white brush, but I'm going to increase the size all the way up. And then if I start painting it, you can see I can get this entire thing to be black immediately, which is exactly what I want for a shadow. So now I can deselect just by hitting the selection icon up here. I can turn on my group, and now I've got the group on top, and now I can manipulate the shadow. Let me label this one shadow. So now I can select the shadow and do the exact same thing we did before with the distortion. All right, so now I'm going to apply that motion blur again, downward motion, not too much though. Reduce the opacity down to like 50. And now we can draw our shape behind too. So create a brand new layer, drag it underneath your shadow layer, label this one color, and this one's going to be pink. So now I've got my shadow and my color is separate from my main group. All I have to do is drag my shadow to the right, so both of these are selected, and then tap and hold, and then you can drag it. And once the thumbnail turns blue right there, you can just drop it in, and that will drop it to the bottom. You can see now I got my shadow and my color at the bottom of the group. And then I can just select my whole group and move this so they're not as tight together. On to number 3. Let's create a brand new layer above number 2. We'll label this one branch. And this one's actually going to be our branch and leaves all in one. I'm going to grab my green color right here. So tap on that. And I've got my mono 8 brush selected again. This one, we're going to have a branch that has staggered branches. All right, so for this one, we're going to have branches that branch off of our branches. So for these leaves, they're going to be that kind of short and fat ones. So it's a teardrop. Okay, same thing as before. We're going to drop in the color. Okay, so it's kind of similar to what we did in the last one. For this one, we're going to add that extra detail and it's going to look like light leaks. So branches that are kind of in a wooded area where the sun's poking through, some branches above it. So you get these really cool highlights that are kind of sporadic and random on top of the different leaves. So in order to do this, we're just going to create a brand new layer right above it. We're going to call this one Light Leaks. And I'm going to grab my lightest color, so it's the one right in the middle at the top. And for this one, I'm going to increase the size of my brush to 20%. And I'm just going to put little lines, kind of looks like confetti. And then you're just going to apply a Gaussian blur again. And I'm going to bring this one up to 5%. Apply a clipping mask, so tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask. And now it's masked in there. And you can reduce it if it's looking too bright. I'm also going to change the blend mode of it. So tap on the N and choose overlay. And that will blend those two colors a little more naturally together. And I'm going to reduce the opacity down because I feel like that's a little too intense. I'm coming down to 50%. And now I'm going to apply a shadow again like we did with the other ones, so it kind of lifts off of its background. So we're going to copy our branch. We're doing the exact same thing we did in the first one with copying it. The second one was just a special case because we had multiple layers for our branches and our leaves. So drag this over to the left, choose duplicate. On the bottom one, you're going to tap on your magic wand, choose recolor, get these crosshairs right on top of a leaf, and then we're going to double tap down here and that will change it to black. Now we can select it, choose distort, make sure magnetics is turned off, and now I can drag this down just a little bit. Apply a motion blur, so I'm just dragging it down a little bit. I'm going like 6% for this, and then reduce the opacity. So coming down to 60% for that. And now we're going to put that color behind it. So I'm going to create a brand new layer and grab my fourth color up here at the top. Okay, on to the last one. So the last one I threw in is kind of a challenge one. So if you want to challenge yourself after you complete these and you're feeling good about where you are, now move on to the fourth one. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a brand new layer above my 3 group. So this one we're going to do these really long opposite teardrop shapes. So I'm going to grab my light blue color right here. So it's the very first one. I'm going to create one branch down the middle. So these ones are going to be kind of staggered, but they're going to attach directly to the main branch. So we're doing this shape right here. So these ones are really long, but these ones are going to kind of curve up a little bit too. And the whole point of this one is we're going to have overlaps, and we're going to show those overlaps with shadows. So it's really important that we make some of these ones overlap other ones. So I'm going to have one right here that comes up and overlaps. I'll have another one here, but then this one's going to overlap both of them. Okay, so now I'm going to fill all of these in, even the overlapped areas. Now you can see that my branch looks really, really scrawny compared to the rest of my leaves, so I'm going to thicken my branch up a little bit so it doesn't look so weird. And another way to thicken it up is you can just come to where all of these leaves are hitting and just make a smooth transition between them. All right, so here comes the more complex part. So I'm going to create, let's label this one branch, create a brand new layer right above it. This one's going to be called shadows. I'm going to grab this second one right here. So wherever these overlaps are happening, so there's obviously an overlap right here, but up on the top side, it's not going to be as thick as it's going to be on the other side because I want my light source to kind of be coming from here. So there's still going to be a subtle shadow cast because there is an overlap happening, but there's going to be a greater shadow cast on this side. So this one's going to be finer here, but maybe a little thicker on this side. So I want to make sure that I'm creating these areas of variation because if I just have lines everywhere, it's not going to look real. And we want this to look realistic. Make a line here, maybe add a little bit of thickness right there, but a lot of thickness on this side. So now we have our shadow areas here. And now we're going to apply Gaussian blur to them. So tap on your magic wand, choose Gaussian blur. We're going to increase this up to, this is 3%. We're going to apply a multiply blend mode so we can darken it up. So tap on the end, drag this up to multiply, and now we're going to apply a clipping mask. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask. So now this is masking into our existing shape. But you can see wherever we have these leaves that are in the forefront, they're not crisp around the edges because we applied that Gaussian blur. And we want that to be crisp because this will not look real until those edges are crisper. I'm going to use layer masking for this because it's the smartest, most non-destructive way to do this. I'll leave a link on screen and in the video description to my masking tutorial. If this makes you uncomfortable at all, you can use the eraser. I recommend against it because it's a destructive form of editing. This way, whatever you hide, you can always bring back if you mess up later. To give you a quick overview of masking, we're going to tap on the layer thumbnail, we're going to choose mask. You can see now we've got a layer mask up here. This is all white because everything is showing up right now. Wherever I paint in black on the layer mask, it will hide portions of my artwork. Portions of my artwork that are attached to whatever layer's right underneath it. So since this is my shadow layer, whenever I paint in black on this layer, so if I double tap where the black is, this is really important. You gotta make sure you got true black right here. Wherever I paint in black on this layer mask, you can see it removes it or it's hiding it. And I can always bring it back by either undoing it or if I paint in white, double tap where the white is, it brings it back. So that's how layer masking works. That's like a super quick overview, but please watch the video if you've never done layer masking before. It'll become crystal clear and it's such a smart way to work. So please go watch that and use layer masking. I'm gonna clear that. All right, so I'm going to use black because I'm going to hide portions right here to make it nice and crisp. All right, so double tap where the black is. We got that. We've got our mono white brush selected. I'm gonna reduce the size of this down to 3% so we can be super precise. And I'm just gonna paint along the edge here. And there we go. Nice, crisp edge. There we go. So that looks way more realistic than before with it being super soft. You can kind of look the comparison right here. We're gonna do the exact same thing to this one. So you can see that one's looking really nice now because we've crisped up all of those edges. So the last thing we're going to do is apply a shadow to this, apply that color to the background, and then we're done. So I'm going to come back here. We're going to duplicate our branch. This bottom one is going to become our shadow, so make sure that's selected. Come up to your magic wand, choose recolor, make sure your crosshairs are on the branch, and then double tap where the black is, and that will give it true black. And now you can see it's black right here. Label this one shadow. Come back to selecting it. Down here, choose distort. Create a brand new layer, drag it underneath your shadow layer, label this one color. This one's going to be the yellow color at the very end. Reduce the opacity of the shadow. It's a little intense. And now I can group all of these together and label this one 4. Okay, last thing is just putting in our dark background. So tap on the background color and choose the very first one right here, and that will make it super dark, but everything will start to pop then. So those are leafy branches that anyone can draw in Procreate. The first 3 are much easier than the last one, so just make sure you get some good practice with those ones, then the last one will become much easier. Once again, the link to the free color palette is right in the video description, as well as the link to that free mono white brush that we used for every single part of this tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more Procreate tutorials and freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is everytuesday. If you try this out and post it there, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.